What up, Shinigami Kai? Shinigami here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Also, shout out to my Street Beefs fam and just anybody who stumbled across this video, because I'm sure this is going to come up in a lot of searches and algorithms that aren't really topical to this channel. Before I get into that, though, I just want to show you guys my new Street Beefs belt that I got custom made at Kitaro, USA. The one I've been using in Street Beefs is actually also a Kitaro, which I got made without the right specifications for the belts I already had for class. So here's my Street Beefs one that I've been using, and here is my new one. As you can see, the new one is actually not as wide. It's actually a little darker. This is the Deluxe Kempo belt, which is why the stripe is on the outside versus the regular karate belt. As you can see, this is wider. I got this one because this one was a little uncomfortable. It also wasn't long enough, but that's my own fault, not theirs. If you want to get your own super sweet custom-made Kitaro belt with or without the tag, go to Kitaro.com, Kataro.com. Link will be in the description below. I'm actually an affiliate working towards sponsorship with them. So if you have, if you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner, a karate practitioner, a judo practitioner, sambo practitioner, any martial art with belts, get you just upgrade to a Kitaro. Do yourself a favor and use code Danny10 for 10% off. It's a one-time code. Link and the code will also be in the description below. They embroider whatever you want on it. They can even embroider a logo on it. Highly recommended. They even have these really cool jiu-jitsu belts that have the next rank as the core. So when your belt starts to wear off enough, it'll actually start showing the next rank color. Kind of a little hint to your professor to give you the bump up. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to take a sip of my, one more piece of ado. I'm going to take a sip of my green tea here. A delicious green tea latte, homemade. Welcome to another episode of Black Belt Dots. And this one isn't martial arts related. This is something that I have increasingly felt the need to talk about as I've seen more and more memes about it, and just pictures of restaurants with signs on the door saying, you know, no one wants to work anymore. You know, we're understaffed, we're hiring, no one wants to work anymore. I used to work in the culinary industry. I was lucky enough to just barely get out of it before COVID started, and I'm even more fortunate enough to be on the path to doing what I've always wanted to do, or at least wanted to do since I started competing in martial arts, which is GoPro. But I got to talk to you guys about the actual industry, because I see way too many people agreeing with the idea that people don't want to work, that they don't want to work because they're getting more on unemployment than they are working. And while it is true that a lot of people are getting more on unemployment than when they were working, specifically in restaurant and probably retail too, there's a lot more to it than just, oh, the unemployment checks are so sweet, I'd rather sit on that than go back to work. First and foremost, statistically speaking, food workers are actually the most at risk for COVID infection and death as far as essential workers go. You know, they get the most exposure because they're dealing directly with the delivery drivers that are dealing directly with people at home, whether they have COVID or not, whether they're asymptomatic or not. And it really highlighted, this whole situation with the pandemic has actually highlighted a problem with the culinary industry that's been going on for a while. It's a very exploitative industry. You know, you don't make much money. you don't get benefits at all, and your schedule is horrible, horrible. There's no consistency to your schedule. They expect you to work past your scheduled hours, way past your scheduled hours. They regularly understaff. To begin with, even before the pandemic, every kitchen I've ever worked in has not had the proper amount of staff to really efficiently run and give everybody a healthy lifestyle. They don't pay living wages. You got people working 60, 80, 120, 200-hour weeks. It's not healthy. And, no hazard pay during the pandemic. Or if they did, they only did it for a month or two. And now you got all these traps where, they're offering a hiring bonus just for an interview bonus, which will screw you out of your unemployment. Because if they offer you a job and you don't take it, which you probably won't because they're not offering anything worth taking, they'll report you. So the reality is, I got into the culinary industry during the boom that occurred with, the Food Network becoming more prolific, and Emeril Lagasse, and Wolfgang Puck, and Gordon Ramsay, and Jamie Oliver, just all those guys having these glamorous cooking shows and making the industry seem glamorous, and talking about how they went to culinary school, and you look at these guys and they're all making tons of money. They're obviously well off. So a lot of people who like to cook decided that they were going to try to make a career out of it. And, they went to these culinary schools that were for-profit, predatory culinary schools that saddled us all with immense debt, and lied to us about what we'd be getting paid. I was told I would get paid $18 to $20 an hour to start because of my degree, and this is back in 2005. So I went through the program, graduated, got my certificate and my Associate of Occupational Studies degree, and got my first job as a kitchen manager, and was making federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour in 2007. No benefits. Next job was $8 an hour because they had just raised the minimum wage. I'd done a temporary stint trying to sell Cutco knives, but that wasn't very profitable because a friend of mine also was working there at the same time and knew everyone I knew and then some. So she hit up everybody already to do demos before I could. Second job, I was making $8 an hour. Third job, I was making $8 an hour. Fourth job in the kitchen, I think I was making $10 an hour. Next one I was making, and the last three were all recent. So $10, $12, and $13 an hour. So the most I ever made was $13 an hour. Never had benefits, ever. And then you find out too that you're competing for the same job as the guy off the street that never went to culinary school and probably has been working in a restaurant since he was in high school. You were focusing on your studies and actually has more experience than you. So guess what? He's going to get the job first, and that's that. I actually interviewed at a steakhouse and I thought I aced the interview. The guy even told me, like, I got one more person to interview after you, but as of right now, you're the guy. If you don't hear from me, email me. If you don't hear from me by 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, email me. So I hadn't gotten a phone call or anything, so I email him, and the next day he emails me back and says, oh, the next guy after you had 6 months more experience, so I hired him instead. Another time I had another horror story was there was a Buffalo Wild Wings opening in Valencia, and it's a bit of a drive, but I needed a job, so I applied. But they called me the last day of interviews at the last possible minute, saying I needed to be there by 3 o'clock. It was already 1:30. I don't have a printer. I haven't had a printer in years, and I didn't have the time to stop anywhere and print out a resume, which they should have had on hand because I had to attach it to my online application. But, that's just another flaw with the entire employment system, is having to show up with one in hand plus a cover letter and all that other nonsense, even if you've already, submitted it to them electronically. So I drive an hour and a half. They put me in the wrong group of people who were already hired and I was sitting there for 2 hours watching some dumb video Then they pull me out, have me fill out a paper application, and then tell me they're not going to hire me because on the paper application, I don't have the minimum 1 year experience in a restaurant that they wanted, even though I already had like 3 years experience total by that point. So, which brings me back to the reason I'm making this video. When you see these signs and these images of all these places saying, you know, nobody wants to work anymore, it's not merely because the unemployment checks are them making more money than they were making working. Even with the emergency unemployment extra $300 a week right now, I'm barely making like $200 more a month than I was making at my last restaurant job, and probably about breaking even at what I was going to be making once the vacation-y long months of the winter and fall season of the school I was teaching PE at would have kicked in before Rona hit. So the reality is people in the industry who got kicked out when they had to limit the staff, you know, got cast aside by managers or owners who most of the time have never worked on a line, never worked in a restaurant is really common with a lot of owners, especially a lot of these mom and pop places. It's a bunch of people with money who think that making a restaurant is going to be easy money. Owning a restaurant is going to be easy money, and they cut corners. They, you know, overwork the staff. Sponsored by the last place I worked, so I'm not going to talk too bad about them. But I can tell you from experience that the experience is universal across the board, and it's not just fast food workers; it's every food worker that works on a line. And then, you know, the few that are left in a kitchen are stuck dealing with more responsibility, the same pay, no hazard pay, still no benefits. They don't offer you a benefits package. You don't get a 401k. You don't get a pension package. None of it. You know, it's unionizing is tricky because progression in a skill-based trade like the culinary industry, which a lot of people will say is unskilled labor, but believe me, it is one of the most skilled industries ever. You know, I guarantee you there are people who are working in fast food lines that have more skill than the people saying it's unskilled as far as working in the kitchen. So, you know, what has happened is people who have been overworked and underpaid with no benefits at all are now getting unemployment, making at least as much, if not more, slightly more than they were getting when they were working in kitchens. Getting to spend time with their families and their loved ones for once. Actually getting decent sleep. Actually probably having health care because they're probably on state health care right now. And realizing that the life they were living for what, you know, essentially was a passion-based career wasn't worth the passion. And that they're actually burned out and don't want to do it, you know. And then the same people that said, well, if you want to get paid more, go find another line of work. Well, a lot of us have, and a lot of us will be. And now you guys are all upset that you can't get your coffee, your burgers, your gourmet salads, your designer entrees at upper dining restaurants because they're closed, because they're, you know, short-staffed and have driven the little bit of staff they had left away by overworking them even more than they were before. You know, so before you try to judge food workers and even retail workers, because even though retail is a lot easier than working in a kitchen, they're still underpaid, they're still overworked. There's no set schedule. they'll schedule you however they want, and that's another problem. You never get a good night's sleep. You never get to spend time with your family. Um, One of the last places I work, I only had one day off. I told them I needed day shift only. I was very clear about that before they hired me, and I was one of the only people who knew what the hell they were doing when they actually opened, and they wanted me to work more nights. So that was that for me there. That's the thing, most of the time you have to kiss your nights goodbye, your weekends goodbye. The day shift doesn't make much money because a lot of time you get cut early because you'll have big rushes where you're slammed and you're probably in there by yourself or with one other person. I was actually running the kitchen almost entirely by myself during the day because most of the morning it wasn't busy enough to do anything other than some whatever little prep work was left because our prep guy was amazing. Dude was an absolute beast. Got everything done in like an hour or two in the morning. 3 hours, he had the whole week's worth of prep done. So that's the reality of it. It's an entire industry of overly exploited workers who have had enough, realized how bad they really had it, and are done with it. They're not offering anything to entice anyone to come back. And if unemployment is paying more than you are, sorry to say, but you shouldn't be in business. Your business deserves to fail. And I wish you a happy going out of business because that's the only thing you should get anymore. It's 2021. The federal wage hasn't gone up since 2007, 2008. The state minimum wage in California, while going up, is still not keeping pace. When they voted to raise the state wage to 15, it should have been an immediate wage raise to 15, not a gradual raise to 15, because as I've been saying since they did that by the time it hits $15 an hour, it's not going to be enough anymore. It's just not, and it isn't. Cost of living has gone up. Inflation continues because we have a fiat debt system. And the U.S. government doesn't even print its own money anymore, and hasn't for almost over a century. So we actually borrow money from the Federal Reserve at interest, which is what causes inflation. And so, the next time you see one of these signs up or a picture of these signs up, and you decide to maybe go, oh yeah, they're just lazy because they want the unemployment and blah blah blah. No. It's the least lazy group of people who have realized how exploited they are. And this is a bubble that has needed to burst for a long time. Exploitative restaurants all over the place, whether they're corporate or not, that have been underpaying, overworking, and just not providing benefits to their staff for years, are now in experiencing what a normal life should be like. Enough money to pay their bills, and probably then some to actually enjoy a little bit with their family, getting to spend time with their family and their loved ones, getting to get a good night's sleep, and getting to do things on their time. The secret to getting people to come back to work in the culinary industry is pay a living wage, $15, $20 an hour to start, period. It's 2021. It's time. A fixed schedule, period. Someone says they can't work, they want day shift, and they can't work past 4 o'clock, that's it. If you schedule your employee from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m., you know what? You better hire a graveyard kitchen cleaning crew, because 11 p.m., the staff needs to be allowed to clock out. It's ridiculous. Another thing, too, is it's absolutely ridiculous, and I'll tell you right now, and I might catch some heat for this, but I don't care because it's also the truth. Front of the house does almost no work. I don't care how much they whine about being on a federal tipped minimum wage of $2.13 an hour. That only applies that applies in a lot of states, but like California, They get state minimum front of the house, and they get tips. So back of the house is making the same as front of the house, if not $1 more, maybe an hour. But front of the house makes, in one shift, usually $300, and on average, 4 to 5 shifts a week easily. So they're making more in 2 shifts just in tips alone, on top of their regular paycheck, what the back of the house is making in a week. So another thing that needs to be done is at least 50 to 70% of those tips that front of the house gets need to be tipped out to back of the house, because back of the house does all the real work. Meanwhile, front of the house tends to do nothing but talk amongst themselves, play with their phones, run drinks, kiss a little ass, and go out of their way to screw the back of the house. That being said, the fact that they can't ring orders in one at a time, they tend to ring their whole section in all at once. They forget to mod things before they send the ticket back to the back of the house. They'll pick up their food late, which holds up the food production because there's only so much room in the window. Things like that. But that doesn't. I'm not saying they shouldn't get a living wage too. Just that we either need to do away with tips, or 70% of the tips need to go to the back of the house, because back of the house does all the real work, if not 100% of the tips. Which in a lot of places requires some legislative change. But yeah. So reality is, on top of, again, a living wage and a set schedule, you need to offer benefits: full health care, retirement, paid time off, guaranteed vacation, at least 2 weeks a year, if not a month. And none of this 90 days, to get a wage, 30 days. Your probation period of this 90-day probationary period stuff's got to go too. It should be no more than 30 days. And health insurance should kick in immediately. Period. Because the way things are set up, a lot of places will fire you before they have to consider giving you any kind of offer for anything, even if they wouldn't normally offer benefits. Some places do, or before they'll have to give you that raise. So the whole industry needs an overhaul, and a lot of these places need to go out of business, deserve to go out of business, and their owners deserve to get the shaft. That's the reality of it. It isn't people being lazy. It's people knowing that they're worth more than what they're paid compared to the toll it takes on their social life, their family life, and their health. Because I got to tell you, when you're doing 2 double shifts in a row in a kitchen on your feet for over 12 hours, 12, 16, 18, 20 hours a day, 2-3 days in a row, which happens sometimes, and then your shift is never consistent, so you can't even have a healthy sleep schedule. It's just not worth it. It's not good for you. It's not worth it. It's not healthy. Can't even sit down and have a meal. The only people who get their, I don't know, I think most states you're supposed to get 2 10s and a half an hour for lunch. And you never get your 10s. You almost never get your half an hour for lunch because there's just not enough staff to cover anybody to take that. The only people who ever get their 10s are people who smoke. I've never been a smoker, so I've never gotten a break. In fact, one place I worked at expressly said you don't get breaks, which is illegal. And I only worked there for like 2 weekends because I needed the money, and then that wasn't working out because I really couldn't work weekends. They wanted me to work the whole weekend and at least one day to spend with family. So anyone who works in the restaurant industry, unless you are still not over your passion for it, get out while you can. Use this as an opportunity to find another trade, Find a way to be self-employed. Find a way to get out of the food industry entirely, completely, if possible, because it's not worth it anymore. It was never worth it to begin with, quite frankly. And the way your average customer is treating the situation and the way the owners of restaurants are treating the situation is just absolutely disrespectful to all the hard work we all put in. And it is what it is. I really feel for everybody getting slapped in the face with these "nobody wants to work anymore" signs up in restaurants and stuff, or complaining about being short-staffed because nobody else wants to work. Stop exploiting your workers. Stop supporting places that exploit their workers. A little class solidarity would help. There's no reason for what's going on. And there's people who say, well, they're going to automate. Well, here's the thing about automation, and this is my final thoughts on the topic, because I think I've said my piece and explained the situation pretty well, how it really is. Now, as far as automation goes, automation has always been a plan. It's never had anything to do with raising the wage or workers being lazy. It has everything to do with the owner class, whether they're not even in the 1% but own a restaurant, or they are in the 1% and own entire corporate chains, multiple corporate chains, whatever. That was always the plan. They want money, and the best way to increase your profit margin is not to have to pay anybody. So Flippy and that other one that can handle higher dining than fast food, that actually looks like human hands. Can't remember the name of it. It's a rival robotics company. You got Miso's Flippy. It does the fast food. They're actually rolling out all over in White Castle this year. Those automated kiosks, all that stuff. That was coming regardless. And that was coming regardless because it's cheaper to spend $30,000 on one robot that replaces 4 people than 20 to 30, and this is being generous because almost nobody makes $30,000 a year working in this industry, whether it's fast food or not. And then it's to pay $30,000 a year every year per employee, even if you are understaffing your kitchen to 2 or 3 employees. And then any place that doesn't automate was never going to. They just want to keep exploiting workers. So, that being said, support your local culinarians. Any effort you hear about an attempt to unionize, support that. I think it's tricky, but I honestly think at this point, the way everything's going, culinary artists, kitchen workers, line cooks, they need to unionize. Which is going to come with its own cons, like seniority-based advancement over skill-based advancement. But I think the payoffs of a living wage, set schedules, less hours a week, are going to pay time off, retirement, all that, is going to pay off way more than any con could detract from, skill-based advancement. Yeah, I think that's about it. Shout outs to the normal, usual people. Yardy, Indy, Ecliptic Wave, Cougar Jackson, Moose, Memnon Warrior, Rico Tally, Street Beefs, Hard in the Fight. All the links in the description below. Please buy merch. Help support me for right now. Merch is in my Teespring store, and Heart in the Fight also has a Teespring store with Shinigami merch that's completely different than my own. design-wise. So go check them out. Shirts, cell phone cases, hoodies, available in both stores. I got posters. I've got throw pillows, coffee mugs, you name it. Yeah, it's just something near and dear to my heart, and that's why I'm kind of a little more somber, a little more serious, and kind of just struggling to get some of this out. But it's time. It's time. So, I mean, if you see any of those signs and you can rip off the part, I encourage you, call out the owners, rip off the part about no one wanting to work, because it's just not the truth. It's not the truth at all. And even if people didn't, we live in an era of high technology, and we should be focusing on replacing as much human labor as possible, because we did not evolve to live like this. It's not healthy. Life expectancy, we have too much of a sedentary lifestyle because of the way we work. Our sleep schedules are screwed up, whether you work in the culinary industry or not. I implore you, all of you, to support automation, demand automation, research the resource-based economy, and Jacques Fresco's vision. We can do better, and it's way beyond time. Also support universal basic income, because that's long past due too. But the main thing is, call out these exploitative restaurant owners, because that's what it is. That's what it is. Trying to guilt people into coming back to work who they've exploited and who don't want to come back to work for them. That's what it is. Not people don't want to work. People don't want to work for you if you're being exploitative. And it's perfectly rational, perfectly reasonable for people not to want to work for an exploitative boss, an exploitative industry. It's not. Anyway, that all being said, we'll be back to martial arts and nerd-related content next week. Till then, Shinigami out.
Shinigami, samurai master, straight up out the land of Lancaster. No one stronger, ain't no one faster. Turning the opponents into Caspers, ghosts, disasters. We don't do no waiting, where I'm from we attack them. Swift KO kick to the chin, leave them napping. Sniff, take a whiff, that's the smell of victory. Better fear, making all my peers' careers history. Big dubs, all we catch is big dubs. Karate chops to his tops, leave them big slumped. Humble beast, beefing in the street. We don't take no loss, you gon' catch defeat. You gon' catch a fist and some